So, I have some opinions about politics, and I want to talk about them. First thing on the docket, I think that Sanders is the only person who can beat Trump in the general election. I'm not going to beat around the bush. Let's get to it. So there are lots of ways to break down the electoral base, the groups of people that are going to vote not just in the Democratic election, but in the general election. For simplicity's sake, I've chosen to break it down into 4 groups. The Democratic base, Biden supporters, Sanders supporters, and normally Republican voters who don't want to vote for Trump. So the Democratic base are the people who are going to vote for the Democrats no matter who the Democratic nominee is. Not the vote blue no matter who crowd, but people who don't, that's not even a question for them. They're the most reliable group in any Democratic election, and they're relied on by the Democrats. Minor tangent here, the reason that third parties aren't viable in US elections is because they don't have the huge bases that the Democratic and Republican parties have. Biden and Sanders supporters are exactly who they sound like. There are people who support Biden and Sanders independent of party affiliation. Any person that's running for president needs to have a very large base of support outside of the regular Democratic base. The goal of a presidential election isn't just to bring people in to vote for president, but to vote for the ticket the president is on. Although I'm getting ahead of myself there. There is a phenomenon that is not unique to this election, but is uniquely applicable to this election, wherein Republican voters, people who are typically Republican voters, don't want to vote for Trump because they're disgusted with him, and would be willing to vote for a Democrat if that Democrat were willing to appeal to their values and to their needs. And again, this isn't something that's unique to Trump. Go back and watch the absurd real-life fanfic The Newsroom if you want an example of someone who is sick of the Republican establishment and refuses to support them. Although, a fair warning, it's absurd. It is an absurd show, and I don't like it. It also has to be understood that a lot of people voted for Trump under what can be described as false pretenses. Trump made a lot of promises to a lot of people, both explicitly and implicitly. And part of the reason that he is so historically unpopular, part of the reason that his popularity hasn't risen above 50%, is because he is so bad at keeping promises and so mediocre at lying. Biden has 3 problems when you look at the electoral map this way. Sanders' base, his own base, and Republicans who don't want to vote for Trump. So it goes without saying that Sanders has a substantial base. I would go so far as to say that going into the election, he had the single largest base of any candidate. That's not a problem for Biden, at least not in and of itself. The problem is that Sanders voters are uniquely willing to peel away from the DNC if Sanders is not on the ticket. At least 25% and as much as 4/5. That's 80%. There are very good reasons for people to peel away from the ticket if Sanders isn't the nominee. I'll go into those next week, but suffice it to say for now that the Democrats absolutely need those votes if they want to beat Trump in November. Biden, by comparison, has almost no base. As best as I can tell right now, his base is made up of other nominees' bases and the major DNC base. And that's a problem because other people's bases can't be relied upon to vote in the general election. They aren't reliable unless their nominee was the VP or something. And from what I've seen, the people who are wholeheartedly supporting Biden aren't supporting Biden because he gives them hope or he makes them excited. It's because they have dread of the future. They're not voting for Biden, they're voting against Trump. They're voting against children in cages. They're voting against the coronavirus. They're motivated by dread, not hope. This problem with traditionally Republican voters is something that's only come about recently. Repeatedly, when Biden is confronted by someone who is espousing typically Republican talking points, who has typically Republican concerns, he very forcibly rebuffs them. More than once, he's told people to go and vote for Trump. And I can't tell you how bad that looks. These people don't want to vote for Trump. That's why they're asking him about these things. And the Second Amendment thing, you can pass on that. You can say, oh, I don't want to take guns, I just want to keep people safe. Mother of all the fucks! Oh! So in a general election, the base of both parties consists of between 60 and 80% of the voters. The more people who are in the voters' base, the bigger the percentage the base is, rather, the worse off that party is in the election. Because those people are typically relied upon to come and vote. And you want more people than just that to come out and vote. Anyone who wants a shot at any sort of national position, whether it be the president or a senator or a representative, they need a diverse group of people to be willing to vote for them, and even to be happy to vote for them. And as best as I can tell from talking to people who know other people, who know other people, who know other people who have worked or still work for the DNC or the Democratic Party, they seem to think that their base is big enough to take on Trump just by himself, because he's so unpopular. They're expecting Biden to be able to leak some of the voters from the South, where some of Trump's support is strongest. But all in all, they think that their base is big enough just to overpower Trump's base. And that's a mistake. You can say a lot of things about Hillary Clinton. I can say a lot of things about Hillary Clinton, and I have, and I will continue to do so in the future. But one thing that you absolutely have to acknowledge, especially in hindsight, is that she had a very diverse group of people supporting her. She had feminists, she had some progressives, she had liberals, she had people who fondly remembered the Clinton administration, she had people who fondly remembered the Obama administration, and she had a lot of business interests. All of those people supporting her. And she still lost. No, she won the popular vote by just under 3 million votes, and she still lost the presidency. And Biden does not have that strong base of support. Biden does not have a base at all, other than what the DNC has rallied to fight off Sanders in the Democratic convention. Which is shocking to me, because you know who does have that diverse support? Sanders! A presidential election is not just about the president. It's also about a thing called a down ticket, which is people running for smaller offices. And in a presidential election, everything is a down ticket. That is, senators, representatives, mayors, governors, state reps, state senators, school board members, sheriffs, dog catchers. And part of the goal of rallying together a large base is getting people to vote not just for the president, but the entire ticket that the president is on. At least that's the case for the Democratic Party. The Republican Party, in the last 10 years or so, has come up with a brand new, novel idea to prevent as many people from voting as humanly possible. This is because Republicans do not represent the interests of the people, and they represent the interests of corporations who definitionally cannot vote in elections. I cannot impress upon you how much this just blows my mind, how flabbergasting this is. The GOP let the most important parts of the Voting Rights Act expire. That is, they now have given permission to states that have historically engaged in racist voter suppression to re-engage in racist voter suppression. And they have. And now we're gonna have to watch out for fucking self-appointed poll watchers? Okay, minor tangent to that minor tangent. If someone shows up at your polling station and they say to you that you need to pay to vote or that they need to see your ID, they are lying. That is illegal, and you have my permission to punch those people in the teeth. The hell of the GOP strategy is that it works. Despite people coming out in 2008 in historic numbers to support President Obama, in 2010 the GOP retook the Senate. And they've held it since. And for most of that time, they've held the House as well. And in that time, they have appointed hundreds of far-right conservative judges, ensuring that the GOP strategy of seemingly maximizing human suffering remains for decades. And again, what I've heard through the grapevine is that the Democratic Party thinks that their base is big enough to beat Trump's base just because he's unpopular. Not only is that wrong, but that's literally the biggest mistake they made back in 2016. I would have hoped that the Democratic Party had learned their lesson from that defeat, and yet here we are. Biden cannot defeat Trump in the general election. Only Bernie Sanders can. Oh, that one's that one. Hey, yeah, editing run here, and I wanted to clarify a couple of things that I didn't explicitly say in the video. First off, and most important, I don't think that I said at any point that Sanders does appeal to all 4 voting blocks as I described them. He does. He explicitly does. The point of the video is that he does and that Biden doesn't. Of course, Bernie Sanders appeals to Bernie Sanders supporters. Bernie Sanders and his policies probably appeal to Joe Biden supporters, but it doesn't really matter since Biden doesn't have a base. Sanders' policies are very popular with the Democratic base overall. They just don't like... They're just more concerned with beating Trump or getting children out of cages, as I said. And most interestingly, Sanders' policies, we know that they appeal to Republican voters because some of the things that Sanders said that he wanted to do are things that Trump promised he was going to do. Probably in response to Sanders saying that he was going to do them. What else is there? I can't remember. That was a pretty good video. What I am going to do is tip my hand a little bit and say that this isn't just a unbiased analysis of the election as it is. This is an argument. This is an argument that you can use to convince people to vote for Bernie Sanders. I have spent a great deal of time and mental effort, about a week's worth of time and mental effort, drilling this thing down, narrowing it down, making it as simple as I possibly can, so that you can convince people with this argument to vote for Bernie Sanders. And that's what I want you to do with this. I know I don't say this often, but I want you to share this video in as many places as you can, especially places where you think that people will be receptive to the message. That is, the message that Bernie Sanders can beat Trump, but Joe Biden cannot. I said over on Twitter that anyone who engages in electoral analysis, we're all talking out of our ass. And the people who are right are the people who have the most convincing arguments. I think that this is a very convincing argument, and I've seen it convince people already. So, go hog wild with it. I hope it helps. The regular links are in the underbar, as per usual. That's my Twitter account, if you want to see what sort of nonsense I'm up to on Twitter. That's my Curious Cat, if you want to send me questions anonymously, or if you want to send me abuse. Go ahead and send me abuse. I am the rocks of the eternal shore. Crash upon me and be broken. My email is there if you want to involve me in some sort of leftist project that you inexplicably think that would benefit from my participation, although I can't imagine what that would possibly be. And my coffee link is in the description if you think that this time that you've spent watching this video has been valuable to you financially. I want to stress that I do not want anyone to feel obligated to support me financially, to give me money. I'm doing this as a labor of love. Last week, I took my whole ass computer, I hauled my whole ass computer halfway down the state so that I could continue to make videos. I'm doing this because it's important to me. But every little bit helps. It really does. Last month, there was a series of emergencies, and I got a little over $100 from people on Ko-Fi, and I was able to use that to fill up the gas tank to our van a couple of times and buy a bunch of groceries, and that was very, very helpful, and I greatly appreciate it. Yeah, I think that's all I have to say. I'm all say it out. Next video on Thursday is going to be a ranty video, and telling you what the topic of that would spoil the surprise, sort of. But the next scripted video is going to be about why Sanders supporters are willing to peel away from the Democratic ticket, and what it has to do specifically with Joe Biden. Until we get there, take care of yourselves, alright? Kitty.